So the next block of code is the function loop. And so what do we see here? So the first thing we run into, int button state equals digital read push button. Now what the heck is that? I mean, it looks like they're declaring a variable. So I know we said that usually is going to happen at the top of the sketch. But actually, we can declare and initialize a variable anytime we want in our program. And we're going to see here shortly why this is the way to go. So let's break down this statement. First, let's look at the data type and the name. So we're declaring an integer and we're calling it button state. So I bet you can guess what this variable is for. It's going to hold the state of our push button. Great descriptive name. Now to initialize the variable, we see something altogether new and awesome. What we've done is we're setting the variable equal to the output of a function called digitalRead. So now this is going to take a little recall power on your part. Do you remember the reason of the word void in front of the loop function? So we had to write void because the function loop does not return a value. But that's not the case for the function digitalRead. The digitalRead function actually returns an integer, so either a 1 or a 0. So it will return 1 if the voltage at the pin that you specify is high, and it will return the value 0 if the voltage at the pin you specified is low. So, well, what pin? Where are you coming up with a pin? Well, that's the pin that you pass as an argument to the digitalRead function. So in this case, we send the variable push button. And because we want to read the state of pin 2, so if you recall, push button was initialized to equal 2 at the beginning. So, again, all of that is in the in this line of code. int button state, so we're declaring the variable, we let it equal the output of the digitalRead function push button. So, I mean, this is why Arduino really rocks, and really why the C programming language rocks, is because in one line of code, you're pretty much on your way to dominating the world. I mean, it's really easy. So now, the state of the push button is either going to be high, so that's when you're pressing the button, or low, and that's when you're not pressing the button. So if the state's high, that's going to report a 1, and if the state's low, that's going to report a 0. So if I'm pressing the button, digitalRead is going to return the number 1, and when we come to this statement in the loop function, the button state variable is going to be initialized to the number 1. Now if I'm not pressing the button and the program comes to this line of code in the loop function, button state's going to be assigned the value 0. That's really it. It's pretty cool. So when we press the push button, what's happening on the Arduino board is pin 2 is being exposed to the 5 volts from the Arduino board. And so that 5 volts is considered high. And then the digitalRead function, like we just said, is going to return the value 1. And then if the button is not being pressed, then all that pin 2 is going to be exposed to is the ground voltage, which is 0, and digitalRead is going to return a 0. So I hope that's clear as mud. Okay, so we've just recorded the state of digital pin 2. It's either going to be high or it's going to be low. So high is going to be a 1, a low is going to be a 0. So how do we see that information? What if we want to know what the state is? Well, I mean, we would kind of know because we're pressing the button. But what if we wanted to see it on our computer screen? Well, we would have to communicate that to the computer from the Arduino. So in order to communicate that, we need to use one of the functions from the serial library. And we can use one of the functions from the serial library because we already set up serial communications with our serial begin function call in void setup. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use another function from the serial library called printline. And what printline does is it prints the variable or the words that you put in the function, that you pass to that function in the serial monitor. So that sounds kind of weird. So what have we done here? So we've got serial printline button state. So button state is the variable that we just set. So button state's either going to be a 1 or a 0. So what printline is going to do is it's either going to send the 1 or the 0 to the serial monitor. Well, what is the serial monitor I keep talking about? We'll just go ahead and go to Tools, Serial Monitor, and it opens up this screen right here. It's got a lot of white space and some other information on it. So let's go ahead and review let's go ahead and figure out what the serial monitor is exactly. So what the serial monitor does is it looks at the serial port that your Arduino is connected in, and then it's going to display information that's passing back and forth. So if we are sending a 1, then the number 1 is going to come up here. If the Arduino is sending a 0, the number 0 would come up here. Whatever the Arduino is sending, it's going to come up on the serial monitor as long as you're printing to the serial monitor. Okay? So let's just take a quick look. Up here we see this address here, this path address. And what this is the address that your Arduino is hooked up into. So on a Mac, it starts with like a TTY, and it's got like 411 at the end. That's generally what you'll see when you hook your Arduino to a Mac. With the PC, you generally see COM4. COM port 4 is what comes up. That's not always the case, but that's usually the case, and it's really pretty generally just self-recognizes, but that's a good place to start. So down here we see the baud rate. Again, 9600, that's what's specified, and we can pick other ones, but remember, 9600 is where you want to go. And then they've got both new line and CR, which is carriage return. The NL is new line and CR is carriage return, and then no line ending. Basically, this just talks about how the information is going to get displayed. So do you want the zeros or the information to go long across the screen and keep repeating, or do you want like a line there so it comes this way and comes down? And then the auto scroll function, this little button here, a bunch of information is going to be coming from your Arduino. So do you want it to keep following the new information, or do you not want it to follow the new information? That's basically what auto scroll does, and it will become readily apparent once we actually have some information coming across. So that is the serial monitor. Again, it allows you to see information coming from your Arduino. Now, we haven't talked about this send up block up here because we're going to talk about that in a different tutorial. But this is how we would send information to our Arduino from our computer. So let's recap what we've done through the loop so far. The first thing is we've declared the button state variable, and we've set it equal to the output of the digitalRead function. And the digitalRead function is reading the value at digital pin 2. So it's either going to be high voltage or low voltage. And digitalRead is going to report back a 1 for high voltage and a 0 for low voltage. And then once we have the button state, we print that using the print line function from the serial monitor, and we print it basically to the serial monitor. And so we're able to see either a 1 or a 0 at the serial monitor. And then the final thing we do in the loop is we delay 1 millisecond, and that just allows stability in between the readings. So if kind of that transition between pressing and not pressing the button there. And then the loop goes over and over again, so it's constantly checking for the state of that button, and then it's going to change what it shows on the serial monitor based on whether you've maybe stopped pressing it or started pressing it. So let's go ahead and verify the program, and we'll upload it. And now we can come to Tools, Serial Monitor, and now we can see we see these zeros coming up. Now if I stop pressing auto scroll, basically you can see the slider going up here because all those zeros are getting added up here. But if I want to catch back up, I go back to auto scroll, and now the most recent value is being shown there. And we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and press the button. Let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. It's all ones now. So the voltage is high. Remember, 5 volts can now be seen by digital pin 2. When I press that button, now I'm going to release. What happens? 0. Now ground voltage is being seen by pin 2. So it's just pretty awesome in my opinion. Okay? Zeros and ones. Alright, well, that pretty much closes up this tutorial. I really hope you decide to do the challenges at the end of this tutorial. I think it's going to really kind of stretch you and help you figure out what is taking place in this lesson. And I apologize for this thing being so long, but there was just a lot of good information to pass on. So there you have it. I can't wait to see you in the next tutorial.